What's going on, everybody? Welcome. It is a crossover show this evening. It's Breaking Bet, my podcast, with my other podcast, The College Experience. My boys Colby Dant, Noah Bieniek could not be here, a little MIA. Noah taking some much-deserved vacation time. So I'm filling in, and I got my guy Will from Overdue Sports. Had him on my podcast to start the season, a little preseason action. Will, my friend, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Absolutely, man. I'm super stoked to dive into the weekend, even though we have no lines right now and we're sitting on Thursday night. So we're still going to dive in the best we can. But, man, it's always brutal trying to figure out what you want to do and you have really no gauge of what the lines are going to look like.
Absolutely none. And that's the problem. And listen, I know there's no lines out at the moment. That's disappointing considering the first 3 weeks there have been lines. But we're still going to talk through a lot of the big series. We're going to give our opinions on what the prices should be, how we would handicap them, games 1, 2, and 3, maybe throw in some parlays and what we would play said number out to hypothetically. But before we get into all that, since I'm doing a little The College Experience this week, we got to talk about something real quick. We got Edge Boost here. Same Game Parlay Network has partnered up with the Edge Boost, the premier Visa debit card for bettors. An Edge Boost card allows you to avoid the hassle of having your card denied at the sportsbook, DFS site, sweepstakes site, racetrack, or casino. Plus, you can earn up to $750 in cash back rewards for using your Edge Boost card. And if you know your money is safe, as the card is FDIC insured, the best part is no credit checks and it's completely free. Sign up today. Use the promo code SGPN so you get better cashback rewards and instant Tier 2 status. I'm using my Edge Boost rewards on a certain play I like this week as soon as the lines come out. That's edgeboost.bet, promo code SGPN. That's edgeboost.bet, promo code SGN. We're also brought to you by mybookie.ag. MyBookie is your favorite place to bet sports, plus props for every game. MyBookie accepts customers from a ton of locations, easy deposit and lightning fast payouts using crypto. Highlight a bet you like on MyBookie. Head to mybookie.ag, promo code use SGPN or your promo code for 100% deposit match up to $1,000 plus a $10 casino check. That's mybookie.ag, promo code SGPN. Okay, we got some action here. I know we're looking in. Let's get started with a little Old Dominion Auburn. Now, Auburn's off to a fantastic start. We would think it's Samuel Dutton going back to this Friday roll. He's looked absolutely fantastic. I would imagine Auburn is going to be a very big favorite here, but Old Dominion's no slouch. Like, they're not an SEC level team, but we've seen this team hang tough with Georgia Tech in the opening weekend, and this is a team that could be live. We know Auburn hits. Their pitching has been the difference thus far, and that's a lot of the questions that we've had coming into the preseason. But I don't know if I'm sold yet on this Tigers pitching staff. How do you see this series playing out? Do you think this is a clean sweep for the Tigers?
Yeah, I'm with you. Every year it seems like I can never get the read on Auburn pitching, but I will say this about them. They play really, really good baseball at home, and they're catching a mid-major team at home, and I think that's just going to continue with the offense. This offense is red hot. They've got 4 guys hitting above 350 right now. Eric Snow, a transfer in, is doing really well. Ike Irish, obviously one of the top draft picks in the class, is mashing, and he will continue to mash. This lineup is absolutely loaded, and I'd be hard-pressed to believe they don't walk away with a sweep, especially just historically, the way that they seem to play at home. They'll even catch some of the better SEC teams in conference play on home series. So I really like this one. This is probably one that, depending on the line, I might use as a parlay piece. I think Auburn sweeps, man. I would find it really hard to believe that they would drop one of these games. They've looked really, really tough so far. They've beaten some really solid teams so far. And to my surprise, because pitching really has been the crutch of this team over the last couple of years.
Yeah, listen, I really wanted to put these Auburn Tigers in some kind of a future bet. I did, because I believe this team can get there. This is a team that was making a deep run into the College World Series in 2022, I believe. Sonny DiChiara, the big boys offense. They had a great pitching staff. They went into Corvallis, excuse me, and took down the Beavers. So my thing is this. The Tigers are off to a hot start, and it will be cool to see them pick up steam for the futures. But for this weekend, I do agree with you. I think the Tigers are live to sweep, and I like them on Friday night as a parlay piece. Chances are they're going to be somewhere, and I would say like the minus 350 range on a Friday at home. It could be more, but I still think Auburn here is good to lock in.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. That's where I would think the line would be too, but that's always what I look for in these Friday parlays because these are the kind of games that these teams should handle on Fridays. And if they do drop one, a lot of the times it comes on getaway day or maybe they get caught with their pants down on Saturday, but definitely love Auburn on Friday night.
Yeah, I like that one. All right. This is probably, in my opinion, the best series of the weekend and the best Friday game. ACC is opening conference play for some of their teams. That includes Stanford, North Carolina. The Cardinal is traveling their first big move all the way from Stanford, California, or Palo Alto to Chapel Hill. And we should be getting Jason DeCaro, Matt Scott, a premier pitching matchup. Two guys that could legitimately be first rounders, Scott this year, DeCaro next year. My thing is this. Stanford's shown me, hey, you know what? They might be a better team than a lot of us thought. I didn't think Stanford was going to do that much. Had a lot of questions about their pitching, after Scott and Christian Lim. And their hitting, I felt was going to be good, but was it going to be anything even remotely close to the Stanford teams that they've had in the past couple of years? So far, they've played a relatively favorable schedule. But now they're playing a team that I personally believe is proven to be the third best team in the country right now with the Tar Heels. Jason DeCaro at home. I personally would make this game UNC minus 166, Stanford plus 130. I would set the total somewhere around 10. I think UNC, the way they're playing and the travel advantage on a Friday, money line Jason DeCaro, and I think the under is good. Anything 10.5 and up, that's an under. 10, I still think is an under. 9.5, I'm probably off of.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. This is a team that I've been talking about for the last 3 weeks that I keep saying, like, book your ticket to Omaha. This, in my book, Carolina is one of the only teams in the country right now that I feel confident in saying that in. They've been unbelievable, and the offense hasn't been dominant, but they're not really a slugging team. They're a manufacturer runs team outside of Hunter Stokely and Luke Stevenson, but the pitching is just unbelievable, man. And like you said, Jason DeCaro is probably going to be a top 10 pick when he's in the draft. And the bullpen has been ridiculously good between guys like Ryan Lynch, Cameron Padgett, and Matthew Mathis, or however you say his last name. Matthias. And Scott Forbes really is a fantastic coach. He knows how to manage that bullpen really well. If that line is in the 160 range, I mean, this is probably going to be my favorite play of the day, depending on what this line looks like. I'm all in on the Tar Heels. We've seen these bigger teams lose these midweeks, and, we've had the whole conversation of do midweeks matter? And Carolina just game after game, in the ECU series, they had games get moved around and they had short weeks bouncing into midweek series, and they just continue to win. They find ways to win. We saw it against Coastal this week. They score when they need to, and they shut down innings when they need to. And this team is just unbelievably good. Give me the Tar Heels, especially on Friday night. I want to see what the line is, but this is probably going to be one of my favorite plays of the day tomorrow.
Yeah, this is the game that I've been circling because I'm like, all right, well, you know what? We have actually a legitimate series. It's ACC. I want to see how the travel affects Stanford. That was one of my big question marks about them going from the Pac-12 all the way to the ACC, where basically every team is from North Carolina and South. That's a tough travel over the course of a season. So I think this is a good spot for UNC at home on a Friday. It's a lesser series in the ACC, but we got Boston College Virginia, it does look like, unfortunately, Evan Blanco is not going to be pitching, at least on the Friday or Saturday. It's going to be Jay Woolfolk again, Thomas Valancius on Saturday, but Sunday has still been undeclared. I don't know if Evan Blanco gets himself back into that rotation. Virginia long-term is a team that was in my key 3 preseason bets to win it all. I believed in this offense. I think this pitching staff was going to be much improved, and obviously Blanco is a big piece of that. Jay Woolfolk, though, at home against Boston College, where do you make the line, and how do you feel betting it?
Man, I don't know. This team has just not put it all together for me yet, and I know it's still early in the season. You're figuring out bullpen roles. You're figuring out all that. I have to imagine this is going to be close to minus 200, if not more. I mean, I'd be really hard-pressed to believe that Boston College, who was the worst team in the ACC last year, they're playing just under 500 ball. They show flashes at times. They're like frisky at times, but on a Friday night at Virginia, I don't know. This might be like minus 250. It would be my guess, just preliminary, but I don't know. It's hard not to back Virginia, but it's not a team that I like backing right now in their current state, just because they just haven't been a complete team yet. And I'm still waiting for that. I'm still a huge believer in this team. I really think they're going to catch fire at some point, and this is a really good series for them to get back on track and kick off ACC play. So maybe look at a parlay piece here, but I've kind of strayed away from Virginia over the last 2 weeks.
I agree with that. And the reason is because UVA has been so tough to bet on after their first 2 weeks. They haven't looked right. But last week, a nice sweep against Dartmouth. Maybe they shook off the demons. Maybe they just needed a layup and just to beat the shit out of a bad team, put up some runs, get some confidence, and get the juices flowing again. That might have been the cure. I don't know how it carries into this week because, listen, Boston College is probably one of the worst teams in the ACC, but this is still a conference game, and it's the beginning of conference play. I do expect Virginia to win the series. I would hope that they win. The problem is, I do agree with you. I could see UVA being the minus anywhere from at the open, anywhere from minus 220 to minus 250. As a parlay piece, I may include them depending on what else is offered. But the issue that I'm running into internally, Jay Woolfolk is consistently inconsistent. This kid gets his pitch count up elevated very often, very early. He gets himself into trouble with base runners where he's got to work out of these jams. And yes, in a normal UVA middle of the season when their offense is grooving, I can live with that. But if their lineup throws up a dud, then you're in tough shape here. So I need to see what else is out there. UVA is a tentative yes in a parlay, but I would wait further confirmation until the other stuff comes out.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. And I'm going to throw this out there about Woolfolk as he's struggled giving up the free passes so far. And Boston College is a team that looks to run. They're 32 of 34 on stolen bases in 9 games. So if they do offer any free passes, this is a team that's willing and able to run. And that's the kind of team that these bigger programs get caught by a lot of the times. I mean, we saw VMI do it to Virginia in a midweek and they almost caught them. And Virginia walked away 6-4. Boston College plays that similar like style of play. They're not as polished up offensively on getting on base as VMI is, in my opinion, but they play that style. And we just saw Virginia struggle with that style. So if they do walk some batters, especially in this first game, they might be in some trouble.
That's my concern. Boston College, I can definitely see taking at least one here. But overall, I need to see when the lines come out. And like I said, we're just trying to assess what they would be and where you would take them at. And if you throw them in a parlay, because we're dealing with hypotheticals right now, it's disappointing that nothing is being offered. It's 10:15 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday night, when in the first 3 weeks, we've gotten lines by 9 o'clock, the absolute latest. So, that's where we're at here, and just trying to bring you as much of a breakdown as we possibly can. Let's go to the Carolinas here. Coastal Carolina, East Carolina. Once upon a time, this was a series that really turned some heads. Now, I'm not that high on East Carolina baseball this year. In the past, I've been. Not to win the national championship, but consistently, Trey Savage, Zach Root, to bet these guys on a weekend was something that I look forward to. Not so much anymore. I expected a down year from them, and they haven't really disproved me at this point. Coastal Carolina in a new regime under Kevin Schnall. The Chanticleers always have talent. And their offense, despite not being as good as what it was last year, 2 years ago, can still put up runs. Their pitching staff is interesting because they have talent. They have talented arms, but they don't have consistent arms. I would say their best pitcher overall is probably Cameron Flukie, who's going on Saturday. They're going with Luke Jones tomorrow and Riley Eichhoff on Sunday. Would you look to be betting Coastal here at ECU?
I have Sunday circled, actually. I've had Riley Eichhoff start circled for me. Flukie, I think, is by far the most talented pitcher in this pitching staff, but the ERA is super inflated. He's not striking out guys at the rate that I thought he would, just given his stuff and some of the development I saw from fall camp. I mean, he's got 10 strikeouts in 12 innings or 12 and 10, one of the two. And he just hasn't looked that sharp yet. He's rocking a 6.5 ERA. And like you said, like, he might be the most talented in this group, and this is not the East Carolina team of years past. It make that very clear. They're playing 500 baseball, but this is still the Jungle, and it's still Coach Godwin, who's a fantastic coach. They're going to get up for this game. They hung around with UNC in a couple of games, just like we saw Coastal hang around with them last in the midweek. I like Coastal here. I definitely have Sunday circled. I want to see how games 1 and 2 kind of play out for Coastal, how the bullpen gets used, but Riley Eichhoff has been the dude for them as far as consistency is concerned. He's got 19 innings on the year, 14 strikeouts. He's got a 1.83 ERA, a sub-1 whip. So that's a guy I'm looking to back right now. He's shown the most consistency in this staff. I don't know what they're going to get on Friday and Saturday, but the offense for them has been really good. And it's without Blake Barthel really producing at the level that I believe that he can. I've mentioned him before as one of the better, if not the best hitting second baseman in college baseball. And he's really struggled to this point. He's only hitting 227 with a handful of home runs. So the production isn't what I expect out of him, but you still have guys like Dean Mijos, who's flirting with 400. And then you have my favorite catcher in the draft, Caden Bodine, who's putting together a pretty solid season so far, hitting over 300 with 10 RBIs.
Yeah, and I had to learn this the hard way. I thought they might have changed this year. But Coastal historically on the road has not hit. For whatever reason, they can't hit. And yes, they're going to a hitter's ballpark. But does that concern you at all?
Yeah. It's a tough environment, no matter what. No matter who you are going into the Jungle, they're always going to show up regardless of how good or bad that ECU team is. There's going to be people in those seats, and that place is going to get rowdy. And I don't know if this is technically a rivalry, but for me, it always feels like one just because they're two of the better mid-major programs in the country year in and year out. So I think this place is going to be rowdy, and that's not an easy environment to go into, especially because the block or the bottleneck for Coastal over the last couple of years has been pitching. And so I think even though East Carolina's offense is not what it was last year, the pitching is not what it was last year, they almost bring back nobody from last year's team. I still think they're able to catch one and maybe take a series. I picked Coastal to win the series, but I would find it really hard to believe that they walk away with a sweep. I think East Carolina's going to catch them on one at least.
I would agree. To be honest with you, I think Coastal should win the series. The pitching for ECU is talented, but I don't think it's to the point where I'm believing in them to back them. I think overall line should be relatively fair. I think I would probably price Coastal as something along the lines of maybe a -135, -140 favorite for game 1, depending on how that goes. Maybe put Cameron Flukie more in the -150 range. I don't think this should be an outrageous price difference throughout the whole weekend. And just based off the talented roster, I would be back in Coastal. I just get worried about the fact that they have had a tough time hitting away from home, even in a hitter's ballpark. And like I said, the ECU pitching staff does have talent. So picking the series, I would go Coastal. It wouldn't be a parlay piece for me. I don't have that much confidence in it. It'd be just a straight bet. But once we get the lines here, then we can make a more informed decision. This is probably one of the more interesting games, in my opinion. Assuming the pitching matchup I think happens. Xavier against Vanderbilt. The Musketeers have not confirmed their starting pitching. But I would have to think after last week, they have Jake Hooker going on Fridays, who was pretty good against Stanford. At Stanford, 6 innings, 3 runs. He is a very talented pitcher. In fact, one of my subscribers in my Discord went out of his way to DM me and tell me about Jake Hooker, how his son and Jake Hooker played ball when they were growing up, and he was really good. So he said, watch out for Stanford. It could be a tough game for them. And honestly, until Hooker left the game after 6 innings, it wasn't, it was pretty close. So Vanderbilt's lineup, I knew it might struggle this year, even though they added Brody Johnston and they got Mike Mancini. They have RJ Austin. Not impressed. I'm not impressed. To some degree, I feel like Vanderbilt's like a lesser version of Arkansas. Overall, they can pitch, but their lineup is spotty at best. And it's tough picking a team like them. It's the same kind of thing. Vanderbilt's probably more like Nebraska, except Nebraska doesn't have as much pitching depth. You never know when they're going to show up on offense. But J.D. Thompson's my guy. I didn't take him at UCLA last week because I didn't like the travel spot. I didn't like how he wasn't appearing as sharp as I thought he could be. UCLA could be scrappy. They have some guys that could get up for that game. Vanderbilt ends up blowing him out. Here, though, do you like Vanderbilt at home on Friday with J.D. Thompson going, if it is indeed against Jake Hooker?
Man, it's really tough not to back Thompson, but you're so right on this offense. And I talked about them a little bit on my podcast on Sunday night after their series wrapped up. This offense has virtually no power in it. They have 7 home runs as a team, and 3 of those 7 home runs come from guys with 23 or less at bats. So not guys that are in the lineup consistently day in and day out. That kind of lack of production, it makes it really, really hard on an offense, especially when you're playing this death by paper cuts, single offense. If you get shut down at all, which we saw in their last game, I think they scored 2 runs on 9 hits. So when you're putting up production like that and you're unable to drive gaps with extra base hits, with home runs, and in this day and age in baseball, home run is king, it makes it really, really tough to win games. Having said that, it's still Tim Corbin. It's still Vanderbilt in Nashville. I think Xavier hangs around in this series more than what people would probably expect, given that Vanderbilt is still hanging around in the rankings, and it's Vanderbilt against a team that probably shouldn't be in this game. I think this series is going to be pretty close. It's not a series that I have in my head as one that I'm going to go out and bet on. I'd be curious to see the pitching matchup here.
So if it is indeed Jake Hooker on Friday, as I personally suspect, I think this is probably something I'm going to look at as an under. I want to know, obviously, what the totals are, but I'm hoping that we get a total 11.5 or bigger. I think that's an under for me. Because if Jake Hooker goes and pitches the way he's been pitching, the Vandy offense, even at home, I don't have a ton of faith in. By nature, the Vandy boys come with the SEC tax, so you're probably going to be paying a decent amount. Vanderbilt's probably going to be, I would say, 220-ish tomorrow, whenever the lines open. I think it's good enough for a parlay piece with J.D. Thompson. And I think J.D. Thompson, who preseason I had as a top 5 pitcher off the board this summer, at least college-wise. hasn't looked as good as he could. But I expect that to continue to evolve as these pitchers get in better game shape, as they get more innings under their belt and, make some adjustments. That's why I also like the under because of Jake Hooker. I think Hooker can keep the Vandy offense at bay. And like I said, if it's 11.5 or bigger, I think we're going down. I can easily see Vanderbilt win this game along the lines of like 5-2. So Vandy in the under. I think Vandy's good in a parlay piece, provided that the price is somewhere between $200 and $250. If you're paying $3 for Vanderbilt, then I'd probably think twice about it. But I'm telling you, this kid Jake Hooker is good. I watched him last week against a tough Stanford team out in Palo Alto. It was an impressive show he put on.
Yeah, especially in game one. And I've been able to watch Xavier a couple of times this year, one specifically against Oregon State.
Yeah.
And they have pieces in the bullpen. To me, the bullpen isn't deep. And so especially on Friday, if they hang around in this game and it starts off low scoring and it starts trending towards that under, they're probably going to burn their better bullpen arms to try and stay in it and maybe sneak a win. So I'm with you as far as the under. I'm not a huge totals guy when it comes to college baseball. I like to really, really pick my spots, but this might be one.
I would also say what I've been doing and what I'm going to continue to do until I see otherwise. I might look at fading Vandy on Saturday with Ethan McElvain. Ethan McElvain has shown me nothing. I don't like how he's been pitching. I think he's been hanging his off-speed stuff. His fastball's good. His fastball's mid to high 90s from the left side, but he's not commanding the rest of his pitches consistently. He walks batters, and he hasn't really faced elite competition. He faced a couple good teams, or faced a good team in the Desert Invitational. Okay, great. But it's not been good enough for me, and I think right now, fading Vandy on Saturday is probably the move until he shows you something else. I took Vandy on Sunday with Cody Bowker going because Bowker actually has been playing well. And in a layup matchup against Yukon off a Saturday loss against USC, where they scored one run, I thought they would bounce back, but Bowker got lit up. And to nobody's surprise, the Commodores couldn't score. Ended up scoring 2 runs. So Vandy is a very pick and choose your spot with them. They're very, very hot and cold. It's a Jekyll and Hyde team right now, and that is why betting on them or even against them can be dangerous because you just don't know when they're going to show up. But J.D. Thompson, I think they will show up for.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I also had them on that. That was the game against Yukon. I believe they had 2 runs on 9 hits or 10 hits and just 0 run production. So many guys left on base, no extra base hits. Like those are the things you got to do, is especially when they get into SEC play. That stuff is really going to have to pick up for them to be competitive.
Yeah. Let's take a quick break here. Got a little read for you guys. Let's get to Rhythm. Rhythm is throwing an epic March Madness party, and you're invited. All Rhythm users are invited to a First 4 watch party Wednesday, March 19th at the awesome Stadium Swim at Circa Las Vegas. Free drinks, plus you get to hang out with the guys from SGPN, and it gets better. Rhythm is also giving away a $250 March Madness future for one random lucky Rhythm user. Even if you can't make the party, you can still with the future bet. Come by and use Rhythm to help you fill out your bracket and make some bets while you are there. Rhythm's March Madness stats and success from 2024. With Yukon winning, our percentage was 39% higher than in ESPN brackets as a whole. Rhythm had 34% brackets. ESPN had 24.7 brackets. Rhythm predicted Duquesne, NC State, and Oakland upsets. 45% of Rhythm brackets had NC State reaching the Sweet 16. A free party plus a chance at a $250 bet. Go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/party for details. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/party. We're also sponsored by Underdog. NBA, NHL, college basketball, whatever sport you can cash in big with Underdog Fantasy Pick'em. Underdog is offering a Luka Doncic discount for every Lakers game for the rest of the regular season. Also, for football diehards, pick and projections for select players' 40-yard dash times during the NFL's combine. Here's a pick 'em entry I like. Sorry. So sign up with promo code SGPN to claim your special pick and first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus credits. UnderdogFantasy.com promo code SGPN. All right. Sorry, something we don't do on Breaking Bet with the reads here, so I do apologize. Gotta get our sponsors in over here. All right, let's move back on to the ACC. Notre Dame, Wake Forest. Now, Wake and Bake has looked like a wagon. But the problem is they haven't really played anybody. Played Maryland last week, and I mean, if that's the best team on your schedule through 3 weeks, I wouldn't really call anybody they've played a true test to their path for an ACC victory or conference win. Wake Forest is known for the pitching lab, Will. They've turned around the career of Rhett Lauder, and they polished Chase Burns up to a legitimate monster, among other pitchers. Now they've got Logan Lunsford. They brought him over from Mizzou. They have freshman Duncan Marston. They brought over Matt Bedford, who was Notre Dame's Friday guy last year. They have Joe Ariolo, who's out of the Penn. So they have this different concoction. They don't have a Chase Burns or a Rhett Lauder this year, but their pitching has looked good so far. No slouch. The pitching lab, it's great. And the offense looks good. Merrick Houston looks like a first rounder this year. I know he was getting first round grades preseason, but all these other guys have been producing. But at what point do we say, hey, this is the competition and Wake really isn't as good as they're leading on? At what point do we say Wake is probably more along the lines of what they were last year?
I think this series kind of dictates it, to be honest with you. I mean, their pitching has been ridiculous. Logan Lunsford has statistically been one of the best pitchers in the entire country. Matthew Dallas, you didn't mention, got brought in from Tennessee. He's been stellar in a starting spot as well. This is a team that historically schedules lesser teams in the beginning, though. It seems like every single year they just play like NEC teams and a couple of okay midweeks. And for whatever reason, UNC Greensboro just has their number when they go to Greensboro, who ended up beating them again this year in what felt like a carbon copy of their game last year. It's tough to say because this is a team, like, you have to see it against real competition. I say real competition, against like good competition to really believe it. And I think this is kind of where it starts. Notre Dame is a middle to bottom of the pack ACC team, more or less. Feisty at times, but this is a big series for Wake Forest to kind of stamp who they actually are this season. If they come out and they just dominate and the hitting continues to be ridiculously good like it has been, and they keep doing the Wake Forest thing in that pillbox of a stadium, you can say that they have some high aspirations. And the pitching staff, if they look really good again, we can say, okay, maybe they are who we think they actually are. But if they come out and they struggle, or maybe they drop one and Notre Dame competes with them over the 3-game set, I don't know. We might look at them in a completely different lens, but it's so hard to get a read on the teams that just don't play anybody for 3.5 weeks before conference play. I never really know what to make of it. And those teams are always bound to lose a midweek because you just get fat on NEC teams all early season.
Wake's going to be going with Logan Lunsford on Friday against Jack Rattle. Saturday's Matthew Dallas against Jackson Denny's. Blake Morningstar is the Sunday starter versus Rory Fox. So the interesting thing is Wake has legitimately 4, maybe 5 options that they can go with on a weekend. But it seems like they've penciled in Logan Lunsford for their Friday starts. Crazy. Logan Lunsford was something of a mess last year at Mizzou, but he had his moments where he was like, oh, okay. Throws a ton of curveballs. But my thing is this is where I need to see the line, because I'm not rushing to bet Wake Forest. I would be okay laying off them for a weekend, maybe seeing what happens on Friday and going back and making an adjustment for Saturday, because say Wake Forest is minus 250 for an ACC game, and you're getting Notre Dame in the plus 180 range, it's probably worth a shot to take them on one of those games. I think there's a realistic chance even a Notre Dame team can go on the road and steal one from Wake Forest. It is hard to sweep a team in conference, especially if it's early in the season and, like we said, it hasn't played much competition. So that's a game I don't have anything official on, but just wanted to give my thoughts on where I think the series might go and how I would approach it.
Yeah, and you said it's Rattle on Friday for Notre Dame?
Yes.
I would look at Wake Forest on Friday, and if it's Denny's on Saturday, that could be one where I maybe stay away and or look at Notre Dame to maybe potentially catch them. A lot of the times when I am looking at these pitching matchups, and I know it's not the end-all be-all, I just like to look at strikeouts compared to innings because it gives you a good indication if that guy has the ability to miss bats. And against this Wake Forest lineup, if you don't have that ability to miss bats, you're probably going to run into a little bit of trouble. Rattle's got 9 strikeouts in 9 innings, so he's like right at that line. I know the batting average against is really, really solid, but Denny's is at 19 strikeouts in 15 innings, a little bit better, maybe showing a little bit more of an ability to miss bats, less walks per 9. So something to think about. But you're right, this is probably not something I'm going to include because sometimes these teams, when they run into, and Notre Dame by no stretch of the imagination is a dominant ACC team, but when you start to bump up and you get into conference play, these bigger teams can look lost at first, almost like they're shocked that they're playing legitimate conference baseball again. So I'll be really curious to see how Wake Forest looks in the first real test, I suppose this would be.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Notre Dame's 8-1 to start their year, but they played North Florida, they played Iowa, they beat Iowa 2-1 in 11 innings. UMBC, Stetson, they had a nice win against Stetson, who's a tough program, but I think they might have been missing Jaden Hilton, their best hitter. Stetson was. They swept Belmont last weekend, so nothing really there. So I think it is interesting, and we got a comment here from my guy. Dilly Daggers, how much of a step down has Notre Dame taken since they took down Tennessee a couple years ago in the Supers in Knoxville? They took down a big step. They had a lot of veterans on that team, and they had Link Jarrett, none of which are there anymore. That's why, personally, I predicted Notre Dame to be one of the bottom teams in the ACC at the finish preseason. So I think that should probably answer your question. But it was worth us talking about this, Will, for this week. Back to the SEC. Jumping back and forth, baby. SEC, ACC, maybe throw in a little Sun Belt there. Got to keep you on your toes. New Mexico State, Texas A&M. Now, ordinarily, I wouldn't have brought this up because a lot of these SEC teams are playing these layups. This is sort of like the week 1, week 2 schedule where the SEC is playing nobodies. It's their last tune-up game before they go into battle. It's like it's like, think about the medieval times. Think about Game of Thrones in season 2 when King's Landing, it's Bronn and the Hound and all the soldiers are drinking and having a good time before they got to go to battle. This is the SEC drinking and having a good time before they have to go out there and fight Stannis Baratheon in conference play next week. Texas A&M obviously has been having major issues. They were the number 1 ranked team coming into last week. They had a horrible weekend down in Houston. Now they're number 14. Their hitting has been a mess. Their starting pitching has been great. That's really the one shining light on this team. The bullpen has experienced some issues. They're getting used to dealing with life without Evan Aschenbeck and Chris Cortez. Josh Stewart's been missing time. They need him to come back. What are you doing with A&M this weekend? New Mexico State, they should be a pretty big favorite, but are you putting Texas A&M in a parlay? Say Texas A&M's minus 350. Are you touching A&M whatsoever this weekend?
No, I can't. It's one of those things, like, it feels like they've just been the talk of
Yes.
college baseball.
Yep,
Yeah.
Russell, we have to talk about them. We have to talk about them. Yes.
I feel like it's all I've talked about for the last 2 weeks, but I'll do it again. I mean, like a lot of programs, we're so early in the season still. Teams are figuring out bullpen roles. A&M is doing the same thing. You lost your pitching coach last year, who in Max Weiner, who's obviously one of the better pitching coaches in the entire country. So you're kind of dealing with that. You got a first-year head coach with the biggest expectations potentially ever, and you're scuffling. This is the series that Texas A&M, in my head, starts to mash. Like you said, the starting pitching has been fantastic. I think they're just ironing out roles in the bullpen and figuring out who is going to go where, and they just have been on the wrong side of some appearances from bullpen arms. They have to hit. But damn, I'll be hard-pressed to believe that Jace Laviolette hits anything under 300 when we get around to June, and he's hitting 225 right now. I would be shocked if he did. I won't touch them, though. I'm not willing to touch them in their current condition, especially because, like you mentioned, I think this line can be minus 350.
So I agree with everything you said, and I think they need Caden Sorrell back like 3 weeks ago. That's a big piece. And I never thought I'd be saying, wow, Caden Sorrell might be the missing link. But the truth is, Caden Sorrell had a really good year last year, even though his stats don't jump off the screen. He does things, and he does things that go unnoticed. And he's a big line mover in the offense. And obviously last season it went unnoticed because you have Braden Montgomery, who's a star. You have Grahovac, who's going off as a freshman. You had Jace Laviolette, who was pushing 30 taters. You have other guys in the lineup that were producing. But this year, without Montgomery and you lose Grahovac, what Sorrell brings, in my opinion, is that bridge in the middle of the order. Because you have Caden Kent, who I like that move to the leadoff. I think that was a good move. Then you have Laviolette, who eventually is going to figure it out. Wyatt Hensler's probably been their only offensive bright spot for the Aggies. But Caden Sorrell, what he can do, I think you could toy with him, putting him in the cleanup spot. That can bridge the gap between the top of the order and the middle to bottom of that lineup, because now everybody slides back a notch. Hayden Schott right now, I don't think he should even be in the lineup. Binder up, it's hard because you have to find a way to do without some of these guys, which means you need some of these freshmen to step up. So I think Sorrell coming back will be big. Josh Stewart, obviously. But I put Texas A&M on the no-bet list last week after they hosed me with that Friday game against Arizona, where they were commanding 90+% of it and just completely unraveled in the ninth inning. The defense was booting the ball. It looked like they were playing soccer. Absolute disaster. So for that reason, Texas A&M is off my no-bet list. I don't care if they're even minus. They could be minus 150. I still probably wouldn't take them. I need to see them come around first. But wanted your thoughts on what the Aggies were doing here.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's just not a team I'm willing to back in any manner right now.
Totally understand, because I feel the same way. All right, DBU. This is a good midweek. This is a good mid-major series. DBU at ULL. So Louisiana, Dallas Baptist are usually two of the better mid-major programs. DBU, for whatever reason, keeps their best pitcher on Saturdays in James Ellwanger. I don't know why. I mean, you lose Ryan Johnson. It's a huge void to fill. I would have thought Ellwanger was going to be going on Fridays. You got to correct me who the Friday guy is. It's something Micah Dean, maybe, I believe. Let me check, actually.
Is Borberg their Sunday guy? Because Borberg has gotten a couple of starts.
He might be. See, this is so many.
They've got a bunch of guys with starts. Borberg may have started the midweek this week.
Dallas Baptist, Dallas Bombers University, the offense is off to a very, very hot start. They've had some good series, man. They played Oral Roberts. They played LSU in a midweek, and they played Oklahoma this midweek. They beat them 11-0. So the Dallas Bombers are alive and well. Grant Jay is hitting the cover off the ball and looks like a guy, especially as a catcher, who should be a first rounder. Yes, Friday it is Micah Buckham. So I knew there was a Micah in there. He's going against Matthew Holzhammer, which that is news because I don't know what happened with Chase Morgan. And Saturday is James Ellwanger for DBU, and there's TBA for the rest of the weekend. So Chase Morgan not going on Friday changes things now. And to be honest, I might like it over here because Micah Buckham hasn't been that great to start the year. It's a 5.87 ERA. He has a lot of strikeouts, just a little. He only has 5 walks and 15 in the third. But Dallas Baptist can hit. And now the fact that Chase Morgan is not going on Friday is a big deal. And Holzhammer's only got 7 innings on the year, 6 strikeouts, 3 walks, 5.14 ERA. I think this could be a rare Friday night over spot. So I'm hoping if there's a line that's 10.5 or less, I think it's a definite over. I think you start getting into 11.5 territory, it's still playable because now we're getting a pitching matchup that is probably more fit for a Saturday or Sunday. But then DBU on Saturday goes back to their best guy, James Ellwanger, 0.9 ERA, 10 innings, 14 Ks to 4 walks versus TBA. I think this could lean Dallas Baptist for the weekend.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. And this is not a typical Louisiana Lafayette team that we're used to seeing. They are a little bit weaker than in years past. And Dallas Baptist is really good. This is a team that I had in a futures bet to make Omaha. They're really good. I actually really like that over spot that you did bring up. ULL is striking out at like a 27% clip for what it's worth, and Bucknam does strike out a lot of guys. So potentially ULL could get shut down on just swing and miss stuff. But yeah, this could be a really solid over spot. We just saw this offense throw up 11 against Oklahoma, who is arguably the hottest team in the country coming into that midweek game, and they beat the brakes off of them. Grant Jay, like you said, is just going berserk. Chayton Krause has a ton of RBIs. The production of this lineup is one of the best in all of mid-major baseball. I think DBU takes the series fairly handily. Dare I say a sweep? I could definitely see them taking 3. I know the Teague is no joke. That's a really tough place to go, and especially in win 3. But DBU is really damn good this year, and Louisiana is just not what they typically are. And I think this is a good spot for DBU to take at least take the series.
Yeah, I agree, especially with this pitching development. I'm trying to find out what happened to Chase Morgan, so I do apologize. But the truth is, I think the offense is definitely a lot better for DBU than ULL. And if Chase Morgan doesn't go, I don't know if it's there for ULL because Chase Morgan legitimately is outside of Tyler Bremner and maybe Jackson Flora. I don't know if I can name a better mid-major pitcher than Chase Morgan. Honestly, like this kid is unbelievable, and the truth is, without him, it's going to be a difficult task. They've been throwing other guys in the starting rotation. Like Andrew Herman is typically a guy that is good for them, but he's been bad this year to start the season. He's already given up 8 earned and 12 2/3. So I think they're trying to figure out what works. I don't know if Morgan got hurt or not, but maybe they're not trying to show their hand. Maybe he comes out on Saturday. Maybe ULL is trying to get a little sneaky here. So I haven't seen anything on him injury-wise, so I'm very interested there. But one thing I will say about Dallas Baptist, their bullpen has been bad. Their bullpen has been very, very scary. I think the fact is you can get DBU up 6-1, 7-1, 7-2 like they've been after a good starting performance from one of their pitchers, and then their bullpen comes in and just lets it completely unravel. That's what's been happening. That's what happened last weekend. They let Oral Roberts back in the game. They were up handily pretty much the whole series. They let him back in, and I mean, it's something that caught my attention, and I think it's a worth bringing up at least.
Yeah, at times the bullpen has struggled. I will say that. They do have Mason Peters as their closer, whose ERA is not indicative of how solid he really is. He had a really solid year last year between the rotation, and they kind of bumped him back into the bullpen, trying to use him more as a closer. And he had the huge blow up spot against UTRGV, where they went on that crazy 11-run ninth inning, and I think he gave up 6 or 7 of them. He's a really solid arm. And I would be hard-pressed to believe that he struggles like that all year. But, yeah, the bullpen is definitely prone to give up some runs here and there. But, man, this offense, just the way it battles, I don't know. This is a really, really tough task for Louisiana.
I agree. I think overall DBU is where I will go this weekend for – if they offered serious prices, that's where I would go. I think it could be higher scoring tomorrow. Saturday, I like it more with Elwanger. If Chase Morgan doesn't go Saturday, I really, really like it. So that's where our head's at for DBU Louisiana. We've got a few more we highlighted here. Let's go to the Big Ten. Oregon, USC. This is, I would say, probably a top 2 or top 3 series of the weekend. Interesting. We're talking about teams that haven't played anybody, and that's the Oregon Ducks. They've been putting up 5 touchdown spots. They were putting up 5 touchdown spots on teams last week. I think they put up 50 runs against Columbia in the first 2 games of the series last weekend. So Oregon's going to be going with Grayson Grinzel, no surprise, Friday night on the road. First, Caden Hunter. For some reason, USC decided to unstake their normal Friday guy from last year, Caden Aoki, and move him to Saturday. And Caden Hunter is going on Fridays nowadays. Where do you like this price to be? I would think Oregon should be the favorite with Grinzel, who's, even though he struggled early, the Ducks look good thus far. And now with Mason McConaughey going down for Nebraska, which is a huge loss, that sucks. I hope he gets better soon. Nebraska, my preseason Big Ten winner. Oregon now is a clear favorite with nobody in sight. You think the Ducks are on upset alert this week?
I do. I think that this is the best series of the weekend. And originally, earlier in the week, I did my preview show of the weekend. I did pick Oregon. And man, I don't know. Every time I think about this series, and every time I look at the numbers and I look at these games, I'm like, damn, they just might be on upset watch. And like you said, Grinzel has not been what he's going to be. He struggled out of the gate. He's got a 6.32 ERA, but this is a guy that was a preseason All-American. He's one of the better arms in the country. He's arguably the best arm in the Big Ten when he's rolling. He's going to figure it out. Having said that, Caden Hunter and Caden Aoki for USC on Friday, Saturday have been ridiculously good. Caden Hunter's got 20 strikeouts through 15 innings, pitching to a 1.8, and Aoki's got 20 innings in 16 innings, or 20 strikeouts in 16 innings, pitching to a 2.7. These two guys have just been unbelievably good. And it's really hard to take Oregon's offense and what they've done. I believe they're averaging 19 runs a game right now. You have to take that with a grain of salt. They've just assaulted teams to this point in the season, and they lost, and they won some weird games. They won that 11 inning game against Rhode Island where their pitcher went 10 1/3 and Oregon walked them off 1-0. Like they've shown flashes of being beatable, but if you're Oregon, this is the series that you have to dominate, because I think this is where we figure out if they're really a top 15, a top 10 team this year. if USC gives them trouble and if USC does put them on upset watch and it takes the series, I think it kind of opens up the Big Ten a little bit. And we say, okay, maybe USC has a shot. Maybe Penn State, who I love in this conference, has a legitimate chance. Maybe UCLA sneaks in. So I think it opens up a ton of stuff depending on how this series goes. I'm going to be looking at USC, and my theory on why they're saving Aoki on Saturday, specifically in this series, would be because Grinsell hasn't been as sharp. So maybe you think you can catch him against Caden Hunter on Friday, and then you roll out arguably your most talented arm on Saturday and hope to just take 2 in a row right there. And then whatever happens on getaway day is whatever happens.
Well, I like that look, but Caden Aoki was actually starting on Saturdays to begin the season. But this is a good series overall, but it could be something that ends up determining the Big Ten regular season because these are two of the favorites. And now with Nebraska, I'm not going to say Nebraska's done. They're still a talented team. Like they're still in contention to win the Big Ten before the conference play even starts. But it's, that now they have a bigger hill to climb. But in any case, Grayson Grinsell, big fan. I think he's a very good pitcher. I don't personally think he's as good as a lot of other people make him out to be, but nevertheless, I would think it's him and McConaughey as the two best pitchers in the conference. That being said, Oregon, their offense is good. I think their offense is it's good enough, but I don't know if it's anything close to what they've been showing us. And here's the thing. They're going against Caden Hunter, who's been really good. I've watched him pitch a little bit, and going against Caden Aoki on Saturday. Grayson Grinsell is going against a USC offense that is not good, that they can't score. They've had trouble putting up runs. So I want to see where this total opens at. I think we could see potentially, as the trend has been going this year, it's been heavy unders on Fridays and Saturdays. I think this could follow suit Friday, Saturday, 2 low-scoring games, and then Sunday's higher scoring with who is it? With Michael Ebner going for USC and Will Sanford going for Oregon. In terms of a side, I would probably give Oregon the edge on Friday. And this is something that we've been pointing out. Conference play starts. I typically like to favor the home team for game 1 of a series in the conference. So if USC won this game, especially with a struggling Grinsell, I would absolutely not be surprised whatsoever. But I would think against an offense that has not done much, Grayson Grinsell can get back to what he does best. So if Oregon takes game 1, I really like Aoki in game 2 against Colin Clark. And then Sunday's the toss-up day. So my initial handicap with no prices, I would probably say even on the road, I would probably make Oregon something like a -150 favorite. I think that's fair. Conference on the road against a team with a good pitcher, I think 150 for Oregon is fair. Now, I like that. I like that under in Friday, Saturday, and I like slightly Oregon on the road going against the trend on Friday and then going back to USC Saturday.
I'm with you there. I do like that. I do think Oregon is going to find a way to win this series. That offense is really talented despite what they've gone against so far. They're not 19 runs a game talented, but it's still a really good offense. There's a reason they won their regional last year. I know it's not the exact same offense, but they bring back a decent amount of pieces from that 2024 team.
Yeah, the guys that are doing really well, it's not a surprise. Mason Neville, 7 home runs, 340 average. Maddox Maloney, 425 average, 5 homers. Oregon's done well in the bases, 23 for 26 in stolen bases. So there's a lot of talent on this team, definitely. But it, like you said, we have to take it with a grain of salt right now. and I'm glad that we're able to do this. I don't touch totals unless you all suggest. We don't know what the totals are, but typically when conference play starts, especially on Friday nights, what I've noticed a lot in the last few years is the totals are anywhere from 9.5 to 11.5. Typically 10.5 is being the median is what we see most often. So by default, I'd probably say 10.5 is where we see an open. And I think 10.5 is probably fair, but I would like the under there. The Big Ten, Indiana, Penn State. Like you, I took a piece of Penn State at a super long price as my Hail Mary to win this conference because I felt like you that this team was being slept on. Oh, Penn State's a football team. Well, you know what? Penn State's got a baseball team now too, and they're hosting Indiana, who's kind of gotten it together last week. Started out really slow. Devin Taylor wasn't looking good. But now here comes Indiana, bro. I think it's really interesting to see how the emergence of Corbin Dickerson, who's taken a jump in the Golden Spikes market, how Devin Taylor's just coming back with a vengeance this last week. Plus, they're going to be going with Gavin Siebold, Indiana is, in game one. So I should correct, this series is going to be a doubleheader on Friday. I don't know who's pitching. We haven't heard anything official for Penn State, but I would think Ryan DeSantos, their best guy, who they recently moved to the Friday role, is going to go game one here. At home, game one, and typically if the lines are put out, in a doubleheader, you only get the game one lines. I think it's Penn State. And I'm hoping Penn State's a dog in this one. I could see Penn State definitely winning game one, but I could also see them take the Friday sweep.
Yeah, the whole schedule change did kind of throw off what I was planning to do. I was planning to take Penn State in game one. Should be DeSanto. I assume that games 1 and 2 for them will be DeSanto and Horvat. Still looking at Penn State, and fingers crossed they are a dog. This offense has been really solid so far. Paxton Kling has really looked like the real deal. He's got 6 bombs so far on the year. Ryan Weingartner has been fantastic for them. This is just a really solid team, and these are the two teams that I took to win the Big Ten. So this is like a matchup of my two Big Ten darlings. So I just like am invested in this game because I want to see if Penn State is really what I think they can be, and I want to see Indiana start to get back on track after they really struggled. And this is a team that's replacing a lot of pitching from last year. So I anticipated a slow start. I didn't anticipate the offensive struggles that they showed through the first couple of weeks, but you're right, they're starting to figure it out. Devin Taylor's coming around. Tyler Cerny is going to figure it out. I know he's still struggling a little bit right now, hitting around that 250 mark. So he's going to come around at some point, could be this weekend. Like you said, Corbin Dickinson has been ridiculously good. So this is going to be a really fun game. I would think this is probably going to be a pretty short line, would be my guess. Maybe Indiana is minus 135, Penn State's plus 110, something like that. That's what I would think. And I'm going to be looking at Penn State, especially on Friday.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the fact is Penn State's hot right now. They have a better pitcher going. Gavin Siebold, though he has a 6.23 ERA, his Sierra is 3.54. Strikeout rate's pretty solid at 25.9%. The walk rate is okay, 12.1%. But Ryan DeSanto, man, Noah, I'll give our boy Noah Bieniek, shout out to Noah, credit on DeSanto. He put me on to him first week, so we got to bet Penn State on the Sunday. I actually had Penn State, I think, on the opening day against Mizzou, which was a smash.
I did too. Yeah.
And he put us on a DeSanto on Sunday. He goes, bro, I have no idea why Penn State waited to save their best arm for Sunday. This kid is electric. And the St. Joseph transfer, 2.84 ERA, 18 strikeouts, 12 2/3 innings, and his Sierra is 1.94. So I think that's all we need here. And if there is a plus next to the price of Penn State for game one, hit it hard, because this is a team that can sneakily win the Big Ten this year. Last highlighted series is Yukon Miami. Miami lost the series at Florida. It was a tough interstate rival. Those two teams play each other tough, but Nick Robert, Griffin Hughes, Miami starters looking pretty good, bro. Yukon, I like to fade these cold weather teams, but now that they've already played 3 weeks and they have found their groove and they're going to warm, sunny South Florida, you think Miami's got the series on this one?
Yeah, I do. And this is not the same Yukon team that we saw last year make a ton of noise in the preseason. That was an extremely, extremely senior and graduate student laden team last year. It's a similar roster makeup in that it is an older team. It's a lot of guys that jump up from the Division III level. It's just what Yukon does, and they do it really, really well. But that's kind of one of those things where the learning curve or the adjustment curve this early in the season, it hits those teams really hard. And it hit them hard last year too. And then we saw what they did when they snuck into the tournament. They end up winning a regional. So it's probably going to be a similar story. This team isn't going to come on until a little bit later. They did get the convincing win against Vanderbilt last weekend. So they are capable. Like, there's flashes in this team. This is a talented group. I don't think Miami is going to sweep this series, but Miami's pitching is really solid. And I know they just dropped the series against Florida. That's a really good Florida team. Tip the cap to Miami for dominating getaway day, because that's one of those series as well that you can just kind of like roll over and just get the piss beat out of you on Sunday and just like take the loss. But they came out and they dominated Florida in game 3. I could see Yukon taking one of these, but I think Miami is going to take the series.
I think that's a good look. Miami right now with their pitching has been really dangerous, and it did well against Florida's offense, and that's pretty impressive. So tip our cap to Miami, and one of my favorite players in the country, in Danny Cuvée, bro. That kid is a star. I can't wait to bet Golden Spikes for Danny Cuvée next year. So I would probably join you on that. I think Yukon can get one, though. Yukon is that team that is under Jim Penders. They're still a good program. Like you said, they're not what they were. They're not the team that a few years ago was a collapse away from beating Stanford and going to the College World Series. But they're still good enough to catch you on a wrong day. Before we close out here, any other series that you're looking at that we didn't touch on?
Yeah, I'll be tuned in a little bit to UCLA in Maryland. I think can have some interesting stories. At least on Friday, I think we could be looking at a solid game. I'll be curious, just because Maryland typically does not pitch well at all, but they always seem to hit really well. And UCLA is playing that classic UCLA style this year, where they're pitching the shit out of the ball, but they're hitting like 260 as a team. So I think this could be I think this could be more interesting than it's being led on to be. I'm actually really excited for the Friday night game.
Yeah, definitely. UCLA, are they somewhat decent nowadays?
This is a brutal travel spot, though. We're going to see how that affects.
It is. That's why I would probably lean Maryland early, but I would need a real line out of this before I look at that. Yeah. Our boy Mike coming in here. Great show last week, Johnny, with Noah and Colby. We banged out part of that Friday night. Good stuff, brother. Keep up the good work in the lines. Appreciate the support, Mike. But we need lines, brother. I can't stand this. Because the thing is, here's the problem when lines aren't up this late, which I hope this doesn't become a thing. Because last year and the years before, after the first month, Saturday lines started coming out late. So Friday nights, I would go to bed and there's no lines, and I'd wake up Saturday morning and sometimes there was no lines. When I wake up on Saturday morning and they don't start coming out till like 10 a.m., I can't deal with that, especially not for the Friday games. So that's a big problem. But I'm interested in this Oregon State San Diego series. I say this because Oregon State was a team I put on the no-bet list after not last week, the week before. I don't like how Oregon State looks. I know this is a very talented team, but the simple fact is, if not for Easton Talt, freak athlete, goes and runs 90 feet in right field down in Arlington this past weekend against Baylor and basically jumps over the wall into the bullpen to rob a home run that would have ended up tying the game, they might have lost to Baylor on Friday night. And had it not been for Ohio State's disaster of a pitching staff and bullpen, they probably lose to Ohio State on Sunday. I think they lost to Auburn on Saturday too, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I believe so, yes.
They have not looked good. They lose to Oklahoma 2 Saturdays ago, and they lost to Minnesota on Sunday. The pitching staff, while it's high octane, is very inconsistent. Nelson Keljo, I think he's a good pitcher. I just don't – he's not a Friday starter. You can't have him in a Friday role. Dax Whitney's a freshman, so I'll give him a pass. Over time throughout the season, I expect this kid to really develop and mature into a legitimate Friday night starter that Oregon State can ride for the next couple seasons after this year. And Ethan Kleinschmidt, I like. I think Kleinschmidt's a good enough Saturday guy, but there's too much inconsistency. And when it comes to that bullpen, there's only a couple of arms that have really proven to be nails. Otherwise, you just don't know what you're going to get. Lineup, after their first 5 guys in their lineup, it's a mess. Ava Arquette's killing the ball. No qualms there. Trent Carraway, Gavin Turley, Jacob Krieg. Bottom of their lineup is becoming a problem. So if those first 4 or 5 guys don't carry the offense, then they're shot. It's done. Don't even bother playing the rest of the game. And that's translated these last couple of weeks into Oregon State, A, either losing games they shouldn't lose, or B, letting teams that are nowhere near their talent hang around. Against San Diego, a bad San Diego Torero team, they should blow them away. So I'm not betting on them. They need to prove it to me before they can get off my no-bet list. I have a very strict criteria to get off my no-bet list. Oregon State is joined by a couple of other top programs. I want to see how they perform this weekend. Do they lay it on a Torero team that's not good? And I believe the game is in Corvallis. That's a series that you have to win and win convincingly. Like, no, oh yeah, our bullpen closed it out. We almost blew a lead and we won 7-6. Like, no, none of that. Did you win 12-3? Did you win 35-1 like Oregon did last week? But that's what I need to see to get some confidence in Oregon State. And the fact is they're playing an independent schedule this year, which, to be fair, their schedule is not easy. They play some tough teams, but I'm curious more for the fact that how does the committee look on them at the end of the year? They play an independent schedule. They're not part of a conference. So how do they determine if they're a regional host or a super regional host or anything along those lines?
Yeah, I'm with you with almost everything you said on Oregon State. I mean, this is a team that in that same weekend where they lost to Minnesota beat the brakes off of Virginia, who we were just talking about, we think is going to figure it out. And a team that you and I both said that this is an Omaha caliber team. So they do have some Jekyll and Hyde in them. They've shown really, really strong flashes of it, and then they've looked really bad at times. And with San Diego, I think this team is getting a lot more hate than they deserve. They've played a brutal schedule. They played TCU in week 1, and they took them to extras once, and they lost by 1 on getaway day. They went to Arizona, and they lost 5-4. And in game 3, they led for like 7 innings, and then Arizona blew it open towards the end. They lost 12-6. They handled CSU Bakersfield, whatever, and then they got pounded by UC Irvine this past midweek. So they played a really tough schedule. I think they're actually a little bit better than their 2-10 record leads on. But going to Corvallis is a different beast. Oregon State has been traveling probably more than any other team in the country to this point. So for them to actually just like get their feet grounded and stay in Corvallis, I think this could be smackdown weekend for the Beavers, and we see them do what we expect them to do all year.
I would hope, man, because if they don't, then noise is going to grow a little bit louder. Meanwhile, they're celebrating going 2-1, but beating Ohio State and Baylor. I'm just saying for the here and now, for betting on them, I think long term, this team is going to be okay because they have a lot of talent and they have, a lot of pedigree as a program. So it's something I felt like we should talk about. And I mean, you bring up good points. San Diego has played a tough schedule thus far, but I don't really have a lot of stock in the Toreros
they're definitely not what they were last year. I mean, they were a 2 seed last year. It's not that.
Yeah. There was one more. It's a lesser game, but Arizona State Gonzaga. ASU is a team I've bet every Friday night with Ben Jacobs on the mound. Bet them pretty much on Saturdays too. ASU is on the no-bet list now after they somehow blew Friday night. They're, I think, 1 strike away from winning the game. 1 strike. They were up 1 in the top of the 9th, 2 outs, man on third, 2 strikes to I forget who on Minnesota. And the reliever allows a triple to tie the game, and they go into the 10th. Of course, they don't score anything in the 9th because Arizona State's offense is only good from innings 1 through 7, and then come 8th and 9th when it's time to clutch up, no. And then they lose Saturday. Saturday they had a multiple-run lead, coughed it up. They had a 3-run lead, I think, in the 8th. They bring in some freshman with like 2 guys on, thinking he was going to get out of it. Meanwhile, this kid allowed a grand slam to a guy in his first at-bat. They lose. And then Sunday, they were up by 4 or 5. They almost blew it again. And it sucks because ASU was my preseason team to win the Big 12. I'm like, this offense is great. They have a stud in Ben Jacobs. They have a good pitcher in Saturday and Jack Martinez. And now this kid, Jaden Alba, on Sundays is actually pretty decent. But their bullpen is a disaster. It's disgusting. And it just keeps happening. It's like a broken record just playing over and over and over again. I don't know what to do about it. They have 1 good reliever in Josh Butler. So Arizona State hosting Gonzaga. Where would you put the line? Where would you consider playing them in a parlay? How are you going about this series?
This is probably not a team that I would parlay just because of the blow-up potential with them late in a game. The last thing that I want in any sort of parlay is knowing that if we get to the 7th inning with a lead, it's not just let's get it to the finish line. Like, things could hit the fan really fast. I don't really know where this line is going to be, to be honest with you. Maybe I don't know.
Say this. Every Friday night, for the most part, they've been about minus 238 at the open with Jacobs on the mound. And listen, they haven't played really any gimmies. I mean, they played Ohio State, who we now know their offense is legit. Hit. They're the new version of Campbell, with Justin Hare leaving Campbell to head up Campbell Jr. at Ohio State. Played Oral Roberts. It's a solid mid-major team. And they played Minnesota, who Minnesota might actually be decent. I don't know. ASU needs one of those like clean sweep, big win weekends, no bullpen meltdown, because they're entering territory that Ohio State is. If you see either of these teams up by like 1 to 3 runs in the 8th or 9th inning, it's not a bad idea to live bet the opposite team.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that they split with UCLA, who we're like just talking about. That's a really solid UCLA team. Like, they might be returning to form as a program. But then you lose a series to Minnesota. Like, I just don't have I mean, they mash. This offense is ridiculous. Brandon Compton is a maniac at the plate. He's so much fun to watch. But this bullpen, you have no clue what you're going to get. They should handle this series, but they did lose on Friday against Oral Roberts. So it's not necessarily a guarantee. Even if you're backing Jacobs at a higher price, the bullpen is still going to be in play at some point unless he like really rolls and is really efficient. So And with a guy who's as high of a strikeout guy as he is, probably not going to happen. So it's probably not a team that I'm going to touch this weekend, depending on how things shake out.
Yeah. Me too. You don't get off the no bet list by just beating them. But last one is where is it? Sorry, where is it? Where are you? Where'd you go? I think it was. Oh, there it is. Oklahoma hosting Sam Houston. The Sooners' offense was something of a concern for me. I felt like the Sooners obviously have the pitching. Kyson Witherspoon is a stud. He is legitimately one of the best arms in the country. He's going to be one of the first arms off the board this year. But their lineup is not something I fully believe in at the moment. The one thing they do, and Reggie Willits installed it, was the base running. We've known that for quite some time. They're going to be one of the best base stealing teams in the league, in the nation, I should say. They're playing Sam Houston. It's not the same Sam Houston team from the last few years, but they're still a viable option to get up. Parlay piece. Let's talk Friday night. Kyson Witherspoon on the mound. Minus 298. Let's put in the number on it. They've been minus 290. They were not, I think, minus 298 to open against CSUN last weekend. Definitive parlay piece?
Yes. The Sam Houston team, they lost to Rice. They lost a series to NJIT. I know they hung around with LSU in the midweek series, and they beat UT Arlington, who also hung around in some midweeks too. But this team is not good. And with Kyson Witherspoon on the mound, like this is probably going to be a really strong parlay piece for me, especially if we're in fact right and it's right at that minus 300 price.
Do you give them a shot on Saturday or Sunday with Malachi Witherspoon / Cam Johnson going?
I think it kind of depends on what they use on Friday. For me, that's a lot of how I go about parlays is like, what of the bullpen did you use on Friday? And if they end up using a lot of the bullpen, or they use some of the better arms, or if they just simply don't dominate, like if this game is a kind of a yucky one and they win 6-2, I might stay away and say, all right, you don't have Kyson Witherspoon on the mound on Saturday, so let's stay away. But if they really dominate, this might be one of those series where I just parlay them 3 times, and as long as the price isn't like outrageous by the time you hit Sunday.
Fair point. Well, there is some good news here. The good news is one of my Discord, J World, appreciate you. He put me on to Bally Bet. They have lines out and some interesting ones here. Some of them, a little shocked. North Carolina minus 265 at home against Stanford. No totals there, but the UNC, I was hoping for about a full dollar less. But in any case, we're looking at a big favorite for UNC, it seems like. Now that you know UNC could be over $2, you confident in that parlay piece?
Yeah, I still am. Yep. Yeah. I still really like it.
Yeah, I do too. I think just Jason DeCaro, the way he's throwing, it's such a hard one to lay off. Oregon, USC, Oregon minus 175 at USC. That might change the thought now. Caden Hunter against Grayson Grinzel. Now we flip the thought process. Well, Grinzel hasn't really been that good. Hunter has been good, and they're at home. And they're getting plus 133. And you could take the 1.5 at minus 112.
I mean, you could play that game. I mean, if Oregon wins, do you think they just blow them out? That's like the thing. It's like,
see, this is why it's hard when teams haven't played anybody. But Hunter's been decent.
He's been really good. That might be I hate to fade Grinzel just because I'm a big believer in him, but That might be a USC spot.
Maybe it might. And one more we were talking about. Penn State on this book does have a plus in front of it. They're plus 107 to
That's all I need. That's all I need.
That's all you need to hear. To Indiana's minus 137. But also sometimes these other books that aren't as popular, as well known, this one's Ballybet, they do offer lines that are a little outrageous that they're not going to be as dramatic on BetMGM or DK. So, maybe we can get an idea of just how they look, but they might not be that big. Maybe UNC isn't that dramatic. But all right, before we wrap it up here, got to do this. Do it every week. Let me set this beast up. Going 11.7 pick'em contest. I got my boy Noah here. His picks for the weekend. Hang on one second. They usually handle this. All right. Can you see your screen? Can you see it?
Yep.
All right. So Noah is part of 11.7. He joined the Pick'em contest. These are his picks. Coastal Carolina, East Carolina. He's going Coastal. Agree? I know you agree, but
confirm. I'm on that. Yep. Coastal.
Would agree. FAU, FIU.
Give me the Owls.
I agree. Another road team. Oregon, USC. We're back to it.
I got to go with what I actually picked in this thing. Give me Oregon, but this is probably gonna be the closest one of the weekend in my book.
I agree too. I think they split Friday, Saturday, and I think Oregon's going to take Sunday. I think ultimately they have the better offense, even if it's not as good as it's projected. I don't like USC's offense enough to think that they can take this series.
Yep.
Penn State, Indiana. I think we both know where we're going there.
Yep. Give me Penn State.
Like the Nittany Lions. We're going to a deep mid-major. Missouri State, Wichita State.
Give me Wichita State here.
I'm going to slide with Missouri State. I know they've played some tough games, and they have a team that I think Missouri State they were on the board here for a pick'em contest in the last couple of weeks, and I think we're on the right side of that one. UCLA, Maryland.
Give me UCLA. Maryland doesn't have 3 games worth of pitching.
Wow. Do they have 3 games worth of hitting, though? Yes,
they do. But I think UCLA's pitching is good enough to hold them down. Give me the Bruins.
Wow. I'm going to go with the Bruins, too. Tough travel spot is an issue.
Yeah.
But I do agree. I like UCLA's pitching staff. I know Maryland can hit. They have guys hitting the absolute cover off the ball. But ultimately, I think I'm going to go with the pitching here. I like what UCLA's got going on the mound. Maybe Rock Chalowski can deliver something good for us. But that's going to do it for us here on the Combo Breaking Bet TCE podcast. We appreciate you listening. We got over 1,000 viewers tonight. I do apologize that we couldn't get legitimate lines out from DraftKings or BetMGM, but hopefully now you have something to carry in for when the lines do drop and have an approach on how to attack the Friday slate and the rest of the weekend. So, Will, really appreciate you coming on the podcast tonight. And, this was a tough one. They didn't really have anything tangible to talk about in terms of mathematics, but thank you for soldiering on, my friend.
Always, man. Love talking ball with y'all, and hopefully next time we have lines.
Yeah, that would certainly be nice. But everybody in the chat as well, want to give a shout out to you guys. You knew we didn't have lines, and you stuck with us, and we're active in the chat. A lot of chats going on, so we really appreciate that. And we'll be back next week. Noah should be back from his sabbatical at Disneyland. and we'll be able to run it back for the first true full conference slate across the board. Everybody, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Let's catch some winners.